This is the Dallas Morning News.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into SportsDay Insider presented by the Dallas Morning News. I am Kevin Sherrington, joined by my pal Evan Grant. We'll have Mike Curtis on a little later to talk about the Mavs and the fact that they still don't have a head coach and that the draft's coming up next week and what the Mavericks might do. Trade up, trade down, trade out. Look, first of all, we're going to talk about the Rangers. And I think we're going to talk about the all-star possibilities for them, but I think Evan wants to talk about Corey Seager first. So we're going to do that. We're going to lead off here with Corey Seager and the fact that he is now out. He's been placed on the 7-day IL with concussion-related symptoms. And just kind of one more thing with Seager. There's always something. So Evan, let's start off by talking about what you wrote about for today's Dallas Morning News.
Well, Kevin, I mean, listen, the concussions are serious business, and I'm certainly not going to poke any fun at a concussion, and it's unfortunate that Corey did end up with concussion symptoms. But it just starts to raise more and more questions, right? The Rangers had hoped to get him on the field somewhere between 140 and 150 games this year. That's already out the window, and we're not to the All-Star break. This is his 8th time on the IL since joining the Rangers, the 2nd time in the past 30 days. And on one front, it just raises this question. He's played in about 75% of the Rangers games, or 73% of the Rangers games since he's been here. And that counts a 150 game appearance in 2022. But that equals out to about 120 games a year. And those 40 other games are really critical games, especially for a team that's gone 81-81, that went 78-84. I mean, he makes a difference, I think, in 2 years of potentially being a winning club and maybe making the playoffs, at least one of them. And so as he's now 32, in the history of now there's a back issue that arose. There's a history of soft tissue injuries. He plays a premier defensive position. You have this question of how much are you going to be able to rely on him going forward? He's still got 5 years left on this contract, right? Is he going to be able to play shortstop? How much longer can he play shortstop? And if you move him off a shortstop, where does he go? And is he comfortable with that? The second part for me, which was more troubling, was last week. This concussion arose from a play in Kansas City, which he scored on a double from first base, and that's notable. But he should have scored easily. With the way the ball rattled around and the way Corey Ragsdale was sending him, and Seager eased up between second and third, not assuming that he was going to be sent with 2 outs in a first inning, and it's a critical time for the Rangers in a game where they should have played pissed off because they were held up. They were held up for 2.5 hours by a fake rain delay. And so I feel like this one, I hate to say it more than others, is self-inflicted. There would have been no collision if he'd have gone hard all the way. And it just makes my mind start to think, like, if the Rangers need to play aggressively and play more aggressively, nobody's asking Corey Seager to go steal bases or anything like that. But there are situations where you got to go really hard, and you got to be intuitive in those situations. And I just don't know if that's his style of play.
No, it's not. Look, and this goes way back, and there's been lots of things that have happened and over the years with Corey, and I've tried to see things from his point of view and what he is. He's professional, and look, when he's healthy, he's great. Usually, not this year, but usually he's great when he's healthy. But let's take Wyatt Langford. What is it that everybody loves about Wyatt Langford besides the skill set? They love the fact that he's all in, right? Every play, he's running all out. That's what you love about him. And so what does that do? Well, it magnifies the fact that Seager's not. He never tries to beat out a ground ball. He's just not going to do it. And I get it. If they feel like if he does this, what if he pulls something? It's like in a meaningless game, or we can call it a meaningless game, but I don't know what to make of that. I mean, they're not meaningless. They all mean something. And then, of course, as you and I talked about before we started taping, I just go back to the World Series run, and when Seager showed so much emotion and it meant so much to the team, everybody loved it. Even Marcus Simeon talked about it. That when he plays like that, it just lifts this team up to another level. I have to believe that him showing that kind of emotion is one of the reasons why they won 11 games on the road, is because that team felt like it could do anything with Corey Seager playing like that. And the next spring, of course, it's just impossible to get him to sit down and talk. I wanted to talk to him about the fact that, are you going to show the same emotion now in the regular season as you did in the playoffs? And of course, what we saw was no, he was not going to do that. So what does that tell you? It tells you that, oh, well, these games mean more. Well, of course, we know they mean more. But as a baseball player, as an athlete, you are taught, any athlete is taught, that all the games mean something, that you're supposed to give all of your effort all of the time. And that is going to be difficult. And we know that in baseball, that's why they took greenies and amphetamines and did all the rest of it, because, man, it's a slog playing 162 games. But as we know, Corey's not playing 162 games. He's not playing 150. He's not going to play 140. So when he's out there, shouldn't we be seeing more than what we're seeing now?
I mean, here's look. I get everything you're saying, and I in large portion agree with it ideally. But look, every great player has his flaws, and Corey's flaw is that on the field, that he is prone to soft tissue injuries. And so I'm fine. Look, to get the most out of you and to keep you on the field most, we don't need you to run hard every time. If it's an obvious ground ball out, we don't need you to run hard. Most of the time, we're okay with you playing station to station. But you've also got to understand that there are times when we need you to go hard, and you have to be intuitive enough to pick up on that.
Absolutely.
On a emotion thing, for me, that's usually mostly aesthetic. I appreciate guys who enjoy the game and who are intense and all of that. And yes, Corey looks like it's almost just robotic out there to our eyes. Everybody in that clubhouse loves the guy, with the exception perhaps of Marcus Simeon, and he's no longer here. But so I don't think that negatively impacts the team. To your point, that's one thing. It's not a negative, but if that guy shows emotion a little bit more often, and not every game, because then it just becomes eyewash, but if you show that emotion a little bit more often, it does tend to lift this team up. And that's one thing you can do without like being the boisterous leader in the clubhouse and the guy calling meetings and the guy going up and having things, is just show a little bit more, for lack of a better term, joy, emotion, intensity, whatever the right word is. This is why I think people appreciate, and we're talking mostly from a fan perspective. I mean, people appreciate the way Brandon Nimmo plays the game. People appreciate the way Wyatt Langford plays the game. And, I think people appreciate the way Corey Seager hits, but I also think that the way the game is trending now, you can't count on guys to just go out there and slug. You've got to be able to maximize run scoring opportunities. And this was the first time that, to me, and especially in the aftermath of what happened, I was like, this doesn't fit. I don't know if this fits.
Yeah.
That was my takeaway.
Yeah, I don't want to make too much of it either. It's just that when you talk about young rookies coming onto the team, it's like, oh, he's so great because all the energy he brings. What is that? That's what you hear about Zeke Duran. Oh, because all the energy he brings. He's so great. So, well, if you're and as you know, that everybody likes Seager. He's a good guy. Not a bad guy. They haven't had a bad guy in that clubhouse in years, decades. So none of that is an issue here. But you do want to see a guy, get into it. It is frustrating to me to see, Seager, and I don't want him trying to beat out Graham. When I say that, if it's the right play, if it's the right thing happening here, and there's possibilities, then yeah, you got to decide. It is a situational basis when you do that kind of thing. But to your other point, that's the thing. He's a 32-year-old guy playing like he's 38 years old. And that's the problem here, is that I would have more sympathy for the fact that, well, they're trying to keep him from getting hurt. Well, he's 32. I mean, and he was playing this way when he was 30. So that's not good. That's not good when you're having to do this, because then what does that mean when he's 37 years old? Because the contract runs through his age 37 season. What's he going to be like then? You know,
Yeah.
uh, so yeah, it is something for the Rangers to consider going forward, and of course it will have everything to do with what happens here at the trade deadline, in my estimation. If the Rangers go into a tailspin here and they drop out of the race, and if they're 5 or 6 games under 500 at the trade deadline on August the 3rd, well, then I would surely think you'd see them trade him. Although, what are you going to get for him now? I mean, people will be trading it for him on the supposition that, well, he always puts it together, and he'll be great at some point.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that there are ways to trade him and get legitimate value if the Rangers end up going down that route and fall out of it. Um, Probably not as much value as you would have gotten if he'd have been on the field all year and was hitting. But I think you'd still get value. You'd have to buy down a bunch of that contract, obviously. But I mean, if you put Corey Seager on the market, he's going to be as tantalizing a hitting talent who plays a premium defensive position as there is on the market. So I don't think that there wouldn't be a lack of suitors. Let's put it that way.
There wouldn't be a lack of suitors, but you're not going to get what you would have gotten. So, uh, but it is a question going forward, and this is really going to be something too as Sebastian Walcott comes back. And speaking of which, what is his timeline now?
Well, he's around the club this week, but it's just basically a break from the monotony of rehabbing in Arizona. The good news is that Walcott does appear to be, if anything, maybe a little bit ahead of schedule. He has started swinging a bat, though it's basically soft tossing and just kind of light effort against pitching. He's even started to play catch, which was going to be a little bit longer. I don't see him. I think the Rangers are at least semi optimistic that he could be facing live pitching in about a month in Arizona, and maybe play a little bit in some minor league games as a DH before the end of August. But I asked yesterday if it would put him into a position where he could be a factor for a September call up, and the Rangers said we're not gonna put limits on anybody, but that's not where their heads are at. I think a lot of that also changes based on where the Rangers are in September. If they're in it, they could always use another good bat, and they're not going to get somebody on the trade market at that point in time. If they're out of it, there's reason to get him, some major league at bats just to, give him a baseline going into the offseason. So I think that a lot of that is still be determined, but he is making good progress. And as long as we're just talking about rehabbing guys, Jordan Montgomery threw another live batting practice yesterday, and his next outing might be the start of a rehab assignment, which would put him potentially in the mix to join this rotation or this pitching staff sometime right around the All-Star break or shortly thereafter.
And what would that do to the rotation?
Look, I think the part that the Rangers aren't going to say out loud is they've been very, very fortunate to get where they are with basically the same 5 starters all year. Jacob deGrom missed one with a stiff neck. Nathan Eovaldi missed one with kind of some side issues. Those are the only times they've had to look for a starter. They don't feel like they're going to make it through the full season. No team really does with just going with 5 guys. So they'll handle that when they need to. They will build him up as a starter. if worse comes to worse, not worse comes to worse, but if best comes to best, and you're putting Jordan Montgomery into a middle innings sixth, seventh inning type reliever, a lefty who can come in and spell one of the right-handers, that's attractive. Or, and look, Kamar Rocker's got a great ERA right now. He's not going terribly deep into games, but if you decide Montgomery's really ready to join the rotation, do you, for the stretch run, consider like Rocker in the bullpen would take this to a different level that we wouldn't be able to obtain on the trade market?
Yeah, I wouldn't be averse to that. All right, let's talk about before we get out of this Rangers segment here, let's talk about the potential All-Stars here. So in the
Sure.
All-Star voting that's been released so far, the only Ranger in the top 3 at his position is Zeke Duran at second base, correct?
Yeah, he's second to Toronto's Ernie Clement, and he's second by like 700,000 votes. So the good news is that if Zeke can hold on to this like 8,000 vote lead he has over Cleveland rookie Travis Bazzana through Wednesday, I think it's through Thursday, then he would advance to phase 2 of the voting, because MLB, in its infinite wisdom, has made the voting process for the All-Star game more complicated than it is to get through a presidential election, which is saying something these days. But if he can hold on to this lead over Bazzana, the top 2 vote getters advance to the next round, and vote totals reset, so that Clement lead would completely disappear. If not, then I think he'll still be a very strong candidate on the players' ballot for a reserve spot, but he's the only candidate the Rangers have to potentially be an all-star starter. I'm still not sure if he or Jacob Latz, however, are the Rangers' best all-star candidates. I don't want to belittle Josh Young here. I think he's a great candidate for a spot on the all-star team as a reserve, but the third base class is pretty good this year.
Yeah, very.
It's deep. But look, I it's hard for me to, what Jacob Latz is doing in the bullpen, and the bullpen spots and will largely be determined by player vote. It's not something that fans vote on. But what Jacob is doing in the bullpen is just absolutely, to me, mind-blowing in this day and age. He's got 6 saves of more than an inning, and that's more than anybody in baseball's had in the last 5 years. It's a unrivaled weapon for Skip Schumacher, especially like he used him in Kansas City on that Thursday getaway day. They had the 2 lefties coming up in the 8th inning, Pasquantino and Caglianone, and those were their 2 biggest threats. Well, Bobby Witt, obviously, but they had the 2 biggest threats coming up in that inning. And he was able to go to his lefty there in a high leverage situation. And then Latz came out and closed the game out in the 9th and did it on like 15 total pitches, 14 of them for strikes, and he was pitching on a back-to-back day. So it's just like teams haven't had this kind of a closer in a long, long time.
I wrote in my newsletter Monday that he's the most valuable Rangers reliever this century. And really, I mean, if you look at the best, Rangers relievers, or at least of the last 40 years, that John Wetland and Jeff Russell, probably the 2 best, or, over an extended period of time.
Well, Feliz was pretty good in 10 and 11 right up until the
Charlie
World
Feliz
Series.
was really good. Yeah, he was. There's no question about that. But none of those guys are doing what Latz is doing, and just what you talked about being a multi-inning reliever. Those guys are all 1-inning guys, one and done. That's that, and that's a lot easier than what Latz is doing. And I was saying he would have to sustain this, right, over the course of an entire season to qualify for this title that I've trumped up. And I'm not sure he can do that. That's going to be a very difficult thing to do. But that is just, as you noted, people just don't do that anymore, or really haven't done it in the last 40 years. There's been no 50 years, been no closers who went more than 1 inning consistently. They might do it every once in a while, but not consistently like Latz has done. So these are the things that to me that make you feel good about the Rangers' chances when you get things from people that are not only just okay, but all-star level play from guys. This usually is a harbinger of something good for your club, right? When you get Latch pitching like that, you get Josh Young playing all-star second, third base. You get Zeke Duran all-star at second base. These were none of these three things you could have even remotely hoped for the Rangers this season, and they have all
No.
three of those things. And if you, so that's what makes you think that if Seager does put it together, that Wyatt Langford does put it together, that Brandon Nimmo picks it back up and more towards what he was playing at the first of the season, and that's I think rightful to expect that of him. And then if Evan Carter did anything in center field offensively, then you got something here, right?
Yeah, I mean, but this is the thing, Kevin, right? I mean, with the track records that Josh Young have and that Zeke Duran have, and listen, both of them have made adjustments from my perspective that are more long term, but you still expect that there's going to be not expect, but there's no proven track record to say this can continue for 162. With each game that they play, it becomes more possible, but you have to also prepare for the possibility that there may be a slump in there somewhere. And that's why the fact that Seager and Langford and, to a lesser degree, Carter, only because, look, Carter's really contributed defensively and has been out there for most of the season. The fact that those guys haven't contributed offensively has really hurt the opportunities here to be in a much better position. And we've said all this, right? And there are only three Rangers. There are four Rangers in the voting leaders in the top 10 at their respective positions. And you mentioned Josh Young. We mentioned Zeke Duran. Seager, because of his name, is seventh at shortstop. But we also haven't mentioned the fact that Jock Peterson has a 200-point improvement in his OPS from last year to this year, and he's fifth among the DHs. Now, he's not going to win. He's not going to finish second, and he's probably not going to make the team. But the Rangers have gotten far more than they expected to get out of Jock Peterson this year. So that's the shame of this whole thing, is that there have been some really good offensive performances that have been diluted by the fact that the guys who are the most reliable or should be the most reliable haven't.
Yeah, no question about that. All right, that's going to do it for the Rangers segment of our podcast. We're going to bring in now Mike Curtis, who covers the Mavericks for the Dallas Morning News. Mike, how you doing?
Doing pretty good. How's it going, y'all?
Well, we're happening, man. We're right there, and we're waiting to find out what's happening with the Mavericks, Mike, because I'm afraid that it appears that Masai Ujiri has fallen asleep on the job. That he doesn't realize the draft is Tuesday as we're taping this coming Tuesday, and he still doesn't have a head coach. He's got a general manager. So what the heck's going on, Mike?
Yeah, it's so funny. I thought he would have had a coach definitely by now because he hired his general manager 4 days after he got hired. So sometimes you would think that he already had somebody in mind, but he's going through this comprehensive search, as he labeled it, and he's doing his due diligence to try to find who's going to succeed Jason Kidd. From what I understand, he's casting a wide net. He's touched the college ranks. He's interviewing a lot of major assistants around the league, and I'm curious to see what's going to happen because it's been relatively quiet.
So, Mike, with the draft as we're taping is exactly or almost exactly a week away, do you get the idea that they may draft a player without a head coach?
I wouldn't be surprised if they did. Of course, you would want that draft pick, number 9, number 30, whichever spot they land, if they trade up or down. You want that draft pick to, one of the first voices you want to get that call is from your new head coach to welcome you to the team, welcome you to the organization. But I think Masai and Mike Schmitz are just as capable, if not even more, of handling that phone call as well. But it's not ideal. I know every team, no matter what they say in terms of like timing wise, you want somebody in before the draft. I think it makes things a lot easier. And then because after the draft, then it's it's time to go. You're going to free agency, which starts June 30th. Before you know it, summer league will be here, and then the trade market, and guys want to know who they're going to be playing for. I think that's a really big. And they got four unrestricted free agents. Their futures will have to be determined sometime soon. You NBA teams can negotiate with their own free agents the day after the NBA finals end. So they can, if they wanted to right now, they can negotiate with Marvin Bagley, Dwight Powell, Brandon Williams, and Chris Middleton. But I'm pretty sure a lot of that stuff is on hold just because they don't have a head coach right now.
So let me ask you this, Mike. It seems to me that if you're bumping it up against the draft so closely, and it looks like you might not have a head coach before then, that just screams to me that, well, then you're hiring an assistant. You're hiring a guy who's never been a head coach before, because what the heck, he's not going to have any kind of say over that. You're getting the chance to be a excuse me, you're getting a chance to be a head coach for the first time. You don't have any say over anything. You got to just do whatever we tell you. Whereas if you were hiring somebody that had been a head coach before, he's going to want to say, "Yeah, I want to say in this." It's like the old Bill Parcells line: if you're going to expect me to cook this, I want to be able to shop for the groceries. So, doesn't it seem that way to you now?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, the list of candidates has been reported widely. They say they're looking at Micah Nori, who's in Minnesota, Royal Ivy, who's in Houston. Um, I hope I don't butcher his name. Jama Malela, who is in Toronto, and Boston's Tony Dobbins, along with Terry Stotts, who also spent 4 years an assistant here in Dallas,
Right.
played a big role in that championship in 2011. So I think that right there, you have guys who have been around the game. Obviously, they haven't had first time head coaching jobs, but if you look at the recent trend in the NBA, that's where a lot of these teams are going. They want established assistants who've been with programs and kind of know what it takes. A lot of them are like lead associate head coaches, so they're like the first coaches in front of the bench right after the head coach. You look at what Boston has done with Missoula going after Ime Udoka. Obviously, Charlotte hired Charles Lee away from Boston and Milwaukee. Jordan Ott went to Phoenix after spending time in Cleveland. So I think it's a popular trend right now to go get an assistant head coach.
Here's my problem with this, Kevin. I think you kind of hit on this a minute ago, and I get you're a first time head coach that you're going to hire, and you're gonna be happy with it. You're gonna like what you get, and whether you like it or not. But I do think, since I take all my cues from my beat, one of the things that Skip Schumacher is a big believer in is this 4-letter acronym CAPE: communication, alignment, preparation, execution. And it feels like the alignment here is going to be missing, because the decision is going to be made for the head coach. And ultimately, usually the decision is made for the head coach, but leaving them out of the decision-making process just seems like it's an unnecessary bad first step, because you're going to put a coach in some kind of forced marriage that he didn't really have any input in. Mike, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's really interesting because Masai Ujiri and Mike Schmitz, all they've been preaching about is collaboration, a unified vision, working together towards one goal. And it appears that way, but it also appears as if like this is Masai Ujiri's ship, and it's gonna go. They're gonna win with him. They're gonna go down with him, whatever the case may be. But every decision is gonna lie with him. And obviously, Mike Schmitz, he came in as a general manager, but I think a large part of his role as of the last 30 days or so since he's been hired has been getting to know the people in the organization, but also his focus is on the draft. He's going to have 3 cracks at the apple with 9, 30, and 48, and that's his specialty, talent evaluation. Whereas I think Masai's main focus has been trying to figure out who's this coach going to be and trying to do as many interviews as possible because he's went through 2 coaching searches before, obviously in Toronto. Nick Nurse, that ended up well, ended up getting him a championship, and obviously Darko's still there now. But yeah, I think it's, you mentioned like the alignment part. It does appear as if there's going to be some type of pecking order when it comes to like communication and how things are set up. And I think Masai Ujiri is like at the top of that.
Well, that's what the Mavericks want, right? I mean, they felt like the problem. One of the problems in the previous administration was that, all right, who's the face of the franchise here? Who's speaking up? Because when Nico was there, he wasn't doing that, and Jason's not always so great in front of the camera either, and so it was certainly awkward. And then when you're trying to communicate that, and that's one of the things I felt like at the very end. And then I wrote that the Mavericks just didn't get it. They didn't understand the what had happened here. The new administration didn't understand. The new owners, nobody got it. It's like you don't understand what this meant to trade Luka Doncic, and I think they felt like we just needed somebody better to communicate all of this. And it's like, no, it would have been nice to have somebody stand up and talk about it, but nothing was going to make that right. And so I think they have landed on Masai as a guy to be that spokesman and that face of the franchise, and I think that's fine. He seems like a great hire, but it'd be nice to see something stuff start happening. So let's move over here a little bit because the draft's coming up, and this is going to be the last time we're going to be able to talk about it before they actually have the draft. So, Mike, the Mavericks have the 9th pick at the moment, and that seems to fall outside probably the realm of the point guards that we had talked about earlier, during the season that would be available. And I have seen something here even recently saying that maybe the Mavericks would be interested in, and I don't know, I'll make sure I'm not mispronouncing his name, Adai Mara from Spain, played for Michigan, 7'3" center. And there's always a ripple effect. And we all knew that Wemby was coming, but he got here a little sooner than we thought this season. Now the Spurs flamed out in the playoffs, and he didn't have his best playoffs either. But I'm not blaming any of that on him. I'm blaming that on the fact that they got no point guard on that team. My gosh, they just drift. It's like whoever brings the ball down the floor at any given time might be the guy who takes the shot. And I realize that makes it easier maybe for you not to load up on people, but there's no one to take charge. The difference between them and the Knicks and what Jalen Brunson was able to do for them and how Jalen took over games in the fourth quarter, that was phenomenal. It was just the way he orchestrated that. The fact that they fouled him 3 times at the 3-point line I think those were all in the fourth quarter of that game, was just mind-blowing to me that team just totally fritzed out and lost its poise and lost that game. And De'Aaron Fox taking that shot in game 4, down there at the end, instead of just dribbling out down the baseline, going through the baseline and coming back out the other side, letting them foul you. You win that game probably if he does that. So anyway, but my point is that it just seems like now more than ever, you have got to have something to counteract him. And I don't think that Daniel Gafford is that. I would like to see if Derek Lively might have a shot at it, but I don't know if either one of them could. I don't know how much you saw Mara play at Michigan, but is he the kind of guy that they might be interested in?
It depends if he's going to be available. One, because obviously they're at 9, and you can have a team that goes before them. Obviously, choose Mara, but is that position something that they're targeting? I know when we talked to Mike Schmitz, me and Tim Kalishaw, maybe a couple of weeks ago, he said they wanted a difference maker. Obviously, they haven't labeled what type of position they're seeking. I feel like they need more help at the guard position, because if let's say they lose Brandon Williams and they choose not to exercise Ryan Nembhard's team option, you're gonna have a hole to fill, especially depending on what you do with Kyrie Irving. So I still think guard may be the priority for that position, but I could see a guy like Mara getting drafted, especially for a team that, let's say you don't want to keep Daniel Gafford around. You want to use him as trade as trade value to kind of get something in return, maybe a first round pick or so. You don't know what's going to be the future of guys like Marvin Bagley, who you could choose to resign. He did a pretty good job down the stretch, was able to kind of stretch the floor, give them a different look at than what they had from a big man perspective. But I can see a guy like Mara coming in and doing well. I just think they would probably go for a wing before they go for a center.
He's and Masai's famous for wings, right? That's what he
He
loves.
definitely is. Yeah. Pascal Siakam. You see OG Anunoby just won his second championship. Scotty Barnes. So he has a track record of going after wings, but it'll be interesting to see what they do if they do keep that ninth pick.
So if they'd been sixth, seventh, and eighth, I'm pretty sure they would have taken a point guard, aren't you? Because you could
Yeah.
have gotten one of those at that point. Kingston Flemings, Acuff.
There was a report that came out that Flemings worked out in Dallas yesterday. So that's
He
kind of
did.
interesting.
That is interesting. Of those guys, his shot's a little funky, but he's really athletic, a really good defender. He seems to me the kind of guy who would fit. Now, I would obviously that what they're trying to do is get more shooters around, Flag. So
Yeah.
he not being a great shooter, maybe that's not such a great thing, but I think he's a good enough athlete, probably that
Mhm.
you could coach him up a little bit on that, don't you?
Yeah, I think so. I think what's interesting is the fact that reports are coming out that Braden Burries may be trying to angle his way to Dallas. He's represented by Clutch Sports in a similar way where Rich Paul tried to angle Derek Lively to Dallas a few years ago. So that'll be an interesting pick if they're able to get him, because obviously he plays both sides of the ball. He's able to score. He's not a true point guard, more like a combo guard, but you put a guy like that next to Cooper Flag, and let's say his ceiling is Nickeil Alexander Walker, who's in Atlanta right now, coming off his best season of his career. I think that's a pretty good second option, at least for now.
Yeah, I wouldn't have I wouldn't have a problem with Burris either, just because of that. And they haven't had a two guard, to me, of any great consequence here for a while. And that could be really good. I think that if you do that, I'm thinking that probably Kyrie Irving's here for at least the rest of this year, don't you? Or the
Yeah.
next season.
Yeah, and that's another thing. We still don't know how Kyrie Irving looks. Obviously, we've seen clips of him working out more recently at the NBPA Top 100 camp, and he's looked like he's going at full speed, and he looks like his old self. But that's much different than an NBA game. So we'll have to see how he looks, and I think that they want to at least see how he and Cooper Flag looks on the floor, and what that looks like if they're going to be able to be compatible. And then we may be having another conversation depending on where they are as the trade deadline nears in February, and then they could probably choose to see what his future looks like.
And
But
Kyrie would be expected to be ready when the season starts, right?
yeah, he went on Twitch earlier this month or late May and said that he's almost over 100%. He said at over 100%. So it's kind of weird to know what he means, but
So that sounds like that Donald Trump math to me. I think 100% is the best you can do. But anyway, yeah, this will be a very interesting season because I don't know. I'm not sure that message I'm getting from Messiah about exactly what it is that you're doing here. Are
mhm.
are you thinking this team can compete next year if you have a good draft here and get the guys you want? Or are you looking more down the road here of building around Cooper Flag and whatever is best for him? You really can't argue with that if that's what he wants to do. But I'm not sure what fans want to hear, and I don't.
Yeah.
I think they probably want to hear that. Well, you still got Irving, you got Lively coming back, you got Gafford coming back, you got Flag. If you have a good draft and get a nice player here and you sign a couple of guys, couldn't you put something together here and be competitive?
That whole conversation reminds me of last year. Yeah, they're going to be competitive. They got Kyrie, they got Clay, they got Cooper Flag, who we didn't know was going to be this good this soon, they could really compete. And then obviously they had their second straight missed postseason. Everything went on Cooper Flag's back, but now you're taking that version of Cooper and you're pairing him with Kyrie, and you don't know who else is going to be on this roster. Let's say Najee Marshall, obviously Max Christie. Those four, I feel like, would be safe bets to continue to be on this roster. But obviously, we don't know what's going to happen with Clay. We don't know what's going to happen with PJ and Gafford. You presume that Lively will be back, but at this time, we don't know if that's going to be for training camp, if it's going to take a couple of months. We don't know where he is in his recovery because as of April, he was still in the boot and crutches. I think he's out of those as of now, but yeah, you don't know where this team is going to be. But if they're not good, then they're going to owe their pick to the Charlotte Hornets next year, unless it falls one or two. So you want to be as good as you can possibly be next year, because the draft
Yeah,
conversation.
there's no incentive to be bad. There's no question
Yeah,
about that.
not at all, especially with the rules changing.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of stuff that's still up in the air here about the Mavericks, and hopefully we'll get some of that resolved pretty soon. Before we get out of your segment here, Mike, I wanted to ask you, what was your takeaway from the finals? What'd you think?
Oh, I wish it could have gone 7 games. I enjoyed every single game. I thought that inexperience played a big factor in why the Spurs lost, because they had double-digit leads in most of those games. Late game execution. I'm thinking of game one. Wemby had the look there at the elbow. Obviously, it's a shot that we know he can make, but I don't know if I like that shot in that moment. I think a big takeaway is he doesn't have that go-to move just yet, where he knows he can get a bucket. Obviously, they're packing the paint. They don't want him to get any lobs. They don't want him to get any offensive rebounds. But I think he has to definitely get in the gym and figure out how he can get to his spots and score. De'Aaron Fox, we've seen better from him, obviously.
He should be the second best player on that team, and he was not even the fourth best player on that team.
Yeah.
I think that was just brutal to me,
Yeah.
how bad he was during the playoffs.
The fact that Dylan Harper is just a rookie and he looks sometimes leaps and bounds better than Fox. Obviously, Fox is a little bit older, but Dylan Harper looks like he's played in the NBA for 2-3 years now. That was a real pleasant surprise. So the Mavericks don't have their hands full with that Spurs team being in the same division for years to come.
You're absolutely right. They're so young, and look, you have to step back and look at that. That no one was projecting the Spurs to make the finals, and especially before the season. But I will say that the Mavs opener, when Wemby came out there and just killed them, I just thought, oh my gosh, I was not expecting him to be anything like this so soon.
That's when we knew something that clicked.
Yes, exactly, and I think that something will click with him again, and I give him all the credit in the world, because the thing you would think the one drawback is how does that body stay healthy? How does he play and stay on the floor? Well, he did it, and let's see if he can do it again, because if he can continue to do that, yeah, he will be that force. But I got to say all the props in the world to the Knicks and to Jalen Brunson. The guy won 2 championships at Villanova. He wins a championship here now at the Knicks, of their first in 53 years. He is only the 8th guy to win championships in college and then become an MVP in the NBA, or a Finals MVP and win the Finals. He was only the 3rd guy who had won multiple championships in college and do that. And I also wrote this in my newsletter Monday. I liked him when they drafted him. What's not to like about drafting a guy in the second round who won 2 titles as a point guard? Pretty good. And I remember the conversations I had with him when they said, with a significant Mavs official who said, "Listen, we can't keep him and Dorian Finney-Smith both, and we like Dodo better." It's like, all right, everybody like Dodo, but come on, you can't. In the end, to say that was a decision that you made, is just mind blowing. And then, no one wanted to give him credit even when he was, here. I was writing about him as he's kind of carrying the team to the Western Conference Finals in Luka's absence,
Mm-hmm.
and people are saying, "Oh, look, hey, back up a little bit. It's nice the way he's played, but come on, he's not that great of a player." I didn't think he was going to be this player either, but
Yeah.
I liked him a lot better than certainly the Mavericks did. And it is amazing to see him do what he's done. That he is a formidable will, to do what he does. He is so smart and has so much. He's just a force of nature for a guy that size. I don't know. There have been very few guys that size with that skill set. He's not like he's Kyrie Irving,
Mm-hmm.
it's lightning quick, and has the hops that Irving has, or I don't know, not even Allen Iverson, for that matter, and yet
Yeah.
he's able to do what he does. It's phenomenal.
I was going to say there's only a select group of guys 6'1", 6'2", and under who've led championship teams. You think of Isaiah Thomas, you think of Steph Curry. Obviously he's listed at 6'3", but Jalen Brunson's right there in that class now. All Finals MVPs. And I think it's funny. Obviously, Becky Hammond's getting a lot of flack for what she said about the short guy can't lead a championship team, but Jalen Brunson proved it's possible.
Yes, he did. Thanks, Mike, for coming on with us. We'll have you back after the draft to talk about what happened and how that's going. We'd love to get your thoughts on that too.
Yeah, anytime. Hopefully, we'll be seeing a press conference coming soon. Hopefully, in the next week or so.
That would be good too. That'd be really good.
We'll have one in the next week, one way or another. They'll either have a draft pick or a coach, maybe both.
Yeah, maybe both.
Sure.
All right, there goes Mike. So in news last night, I was at dinner last night, and at my birthday dinner, by the way. Thanks for the birthday wishes. Appreciate that.
Oh, I forgot. Happy birthday. I'm sorry. Yeah. I feel terrible.
It's kind of a big one too. Number 70.
Happy 70th, Kevin. I owe you lunch. I'll take you to lunch in the next couple of weeks.
Really?
I will. Belated birthday gift.
I think so. I appreciate that. Anyways, we're at dinner last night.
Where'd you go for your birthday dinner?
Well, they had a Sevy's wine dinner, and so these friends of ours wanted to take us to
that's right. You've got another 2 weeks to get to Sevy's before it closes.
Before it closes for good. How about that?
Yeah.
The Searsons are really good friends of ours. We hate to see it happen. I'm actually happy for Jim. I would hope he'll just go and fish and have fun and have a fun rest of his life. Go and fish.
Or go and play golf like I did on Saturday, even though you won't ever show up for a golf date.
I will. As a matter of fact, I got a new set of clubs for my birthday for my boys.
Look at that. All right. Well, now we have reason to go play.
Absolutely. So anyway, during dinner, one of our dinner companions says, "Did you know that the tech kid is not going to go? He's not going to play after all?" And I said, "Yeah. Well, yeah, he's supposed to play." He goes, "No, he's going into the draft." So Brendan Sorsby, the announcement last night, is now applied for the supplemental draft. I have to say, now I don't know what the particulars are of that, but it's always a possibility that no one wants him, right? There's always a possibility that he goes to the supplemental draft and everybody says, "Nah, no thanks," because maybe they're concerned about the fact that he's got a gambling addiction, and that might be problematic for him. So
and then wouldn't that be funny if nobody wanted him, and so he didn't get an NFL contract, and so he would have done irreparable damage to his future earnings potential, or there would have been irreparable damage to his future earnings potential, but it was self-inflicted, not caused by an NCAA ruling. Okay.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I don't know this enough about that part of it to see. I mean, look, the kid is supposed to be, a talent. He is a talent. There's no question about that. And maybe some team says, sure, we're fine with forfeiting a 5th round pick for this. This
somebody will take him. Somebody will take him and say, look, we believe in second chances, and we've done all our research and all of that. And again, the same thing if he gets on an NFL field and the first time he overthrows a receiver, somebody's going to wonder who had that prop bet.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the issue. That's the problem here. But Texas Tech has washed its hands of it. And it's very interesting to me how this has all happened. Uh,
Yeah,
you
what's your
know,
theory on this?
well, I think what happened here is that look, Cody Campbell's obviously driving the bus at Texas Tech now, right?
Yes.
And he's the one with all the billions. He's the chairman of the board of regents. And I've talked to people who have been in higher circles at Texas Tech over the last few decades, and they're not happy with him. They have they like his energy. They obviously like his money, but they just wish that he would conduct himself a little more dignity. Let's just say that.
Yeah, but I mean, this
Well,
again is like,
well, this leads to the whole thing I was going to say is that leading into his war with the Big 12. And when he got into it with Commissioner Brett Yormark and said all roads run through Lubbock. Well, Monday, one of the other things that happened was the Big 12 filed a complaint against Texas Tech, in which with the Attorney General, Ken Paxton, for backing their claims. And I think that, which is as I read somewhere, is unprecedented that a league has ever sued one of its own members. And so I think that the prospects of you had the entire rest of the league all banded together. 15 teams said, "Yeah, we're all in lockstep over this." We got, as I understood it, 4 other attorneys general in this conference who are saying, "Yeah, we're with you on this, and we're against what's going on here at Texas Tech." And so, you had all this talk about the Big Ten and the SEC boycotting Texas Tech and not playing them in the future. There was just a lot of stuff going on here. So the potential for other things happening here that I just laid out obviously was a factor in this decision. I think, though, that there were just people at Texas Tech who just said, look, we cannot continue to take this beating, because it's not just now. It's going to happen all during football season. If we go to the playoffs, it's going to go all through the playoffs, and people are going to bring this up over and over and over. And we will never be the good guys in this. We will always be the bad guys in it. You've had athletic directors and coaches and everybody and commissioners across the sport calling this disgusting and using other terms. And you are now the face of everything that's gone wrong in college football or in college athletics. And I think simply that there had to be people who said, we can't have this. We can't be this. No kid is worth it. I think that they negotiated a deal with Brendan. I think they said, look, we won't ask for the money back. You can have the money. Just go. And I think that's what happened here because they did negotiate for that. So, and I think that's what had to have happened.
I can't disagree with you. Maybe Texas Tech even spent some time looking at their own clips from the last week, because Joey McGuire, as much as I like him, and I know you like him, and as much as I like his energy and all of that, terrible look, to come out and say, well, he didn't murder anybody.
Yeah,
that was just, and look, those may not have been the exact words, but that was everybody's interpretation.
Oh, for sure. No question about it. It wasn't good.
And yeah, I mean, Texas Tech was going to, in a college football world without rules, the rules are going to be, the rules are going to be made by people with power, and the teams with power were going to say, we're just not going to include Texas Tech. And so this was their leverage to fight back against what Cody Campbell and Tech has been doing on the money front. This was their the closest thing they had to leverage. So, yeah, it couldn't continue. I was appalled by the judge's reaction. I'm not going to sit here and say it was a Tech booster, because it wasn't. This is a guy who graduated from UTA, as you pointed out, and who wasn't even a typical member of the Lubbock community. But this just couldn't stand. It could not stand. And look, if there's an NFL team that wants to take a chance on him, and there probably will be, and good. And look, I hope not Cody Campbell. I hope Brendan Sorsby gets a second chance, and I hope he proves everybody that believed in him, right? But this was not a sustainable situation at Texas Tech. They cannot become the outlaws in an outlaw world of college sports.
No, and and that's the thing that I resist in this characterization, and even some of the things that have been written by people that I really respect, is that they keep talking about Tech buying players and all that kind of stuff. It's like, look, everybody's buying players. You don't be pointing fingers at Texas Tech for that. And yeah, look, they're having to make up for the fact that they don't have a history of winning, and we don't, and that they are also in not one of the two premier leagues. They're not that either. So they're making up for it. What is everybody else doing? When you walk on these campuses and you see the facility, and of course Texas Tech has great facilities now. They're really world class. But you see all that stuff. That's all been made by money, nothing else. And so that's what tradition does for you. Tradition gets you people contributing money. If they don't contribute that money and give you what you need to go forward, you're not going to make it. It's as simple as that. So I don't like Texas Tech taking the hit for that all the time. And, it's easy to do because that's what they kind of rose up out of nowhere. But more power to them for doing it. And getting in the game. Last year was a lot of fun, and for them, and it didn't go well at the end. And they needed better play. They needed better play at quarterback, and that's why they went out and got Brendan Sorsby. And I don't think that they had any idea that he had that kind of baggage coming with him. And once they got into it, it's kind of one of those situations where instead of just saying, yeah, you're right, okay, we can't do this, they kind of doubled down and kind of put themselves in a bad position. I'm glad that it has been resolved this way. This was the best possible resolution of it, and now they can move forward and not kind of have to take that beating that they were going to take all year long. And even if you win it all, you're still going to take that beating. It was just never going to be good. It was always going to be bad. I think
it was. Look, I mean, it was just a bad decision on Tech's part to stick with this, and they at least came to the eventual right decision before this got to a point where it was permanent. I think they're still going to wear some of this for a while,
for sure.
But ultimately, the decision that was made was the most common sense thing. That, hey, we just need to part ways here. We tried to make it work. We need to part ways. And so we'll see where they go from here. I don't know what Tech's quarterback situation is now, but we'll see where everything.
They had a backup, and he played some, and he was okay. But I don't know if they're out there combing the rosters of anybody now. You can't transfer now, but we'll see what they come up with. It'll be different. All right. That's going to do it for our podcast this week. We've kind of been all over the map, but we appreciate you sticking with us. And we'll be back next week and talk some more about some things that are happening. And maybe even the Mavericks will have a head coach by then. So from everybody in here to everybody out there, thanks, and we'll see you next time.
And happy birthday to Kevin.